John Hook's Newsmaker Saturday starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker Saturday. There's so much going on in Washington between the border crisis, what's happening with the budget, with infrastructure. There's a lot happening. Obviously, Afghanistan, and we're going to start with that today with Congressman Ruben Gallego from District 7 in Arizona. Let's show you the district. This is parts of Phoenix, Glendale, and Tolleson. He's been in the House of Representatives since 2015, elected in 2014. He is a former Marine who served in Iraq. Ruben Gallego joins us with an amazing story we're going to start with. Thank you again for doing this.
Thank you. My pleasure.
You had to get a family out of Afghanistan in the final days as things were devolving in Afghanistan, and it began with a text from a 30-year-old Afghan woman living in Phoenix who returned to Afghanistan back in May to visit her aging parents along with her husband and 7-year-old daughter. It began with a text, I believe, to Lutheran Social Services that read,
Right.
"We are stuck in Afghanistan. We are in danger. Please, if you have any way to get us out of here." That's how it started. Ruben Gallego, take it from there. How did you get involved?
Well, so Lutheran Services contacted our office, and largely because there are constituents, but also we do great work with Lutheran Services, and also had been doing other work trying to get other Afghan evacuees out, whether they were citizens, legal permanent residents, or interpreters, or other refugees. And so we quickly worked the best we could, worked with my staff. They made contact with the State Department, and the State Department and my staff were communicating back and forth. And of course, I was weighing in to make sure that they understood that this was important for us to do this, weighing in and trying to coordinate like the movements of the family to make sure they knew where to go. They were stuck outside the gates. It was very chaotic outside the gates. And we were able to work with the State Department, along with the DOD on the ground, Department of Defense, to make sure that they knew, what gate to show up to, what to show. For example, at some point we had them show different, pictures on their phone so they could flash them so they know that that was the people that were supposed to bring them in. And eventually, after I think about close to 24 hours of trying, we were able to get them past the gates and get them on planes back to the United States.
It's incredible because I think this was just a couple of days before the Marines were killed outside of the Kabul airport. Is that right?
Yes, unfortunately, yes.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, so they're trying to get out, and they are Americans, right? I believe the husband helped our interpreter. He worked as an interpreter for our forces in Fallujah. We're not going to give their names, but there they are.
Yeah, we can name them, yeah.
Yes.
But yeah. So they're all legal permanent residents. So they obviously have rights to be here. He did work for the United States, and he came over on that special immigrant visa as interpreter, and then eventually earned his legal permanent resident status. So, it was important for us to honor our word, and that's why I worked hard to get him out, and we've worked hard to get other people out that we are trying to fulfill that promise.
Yeah, I think I misspoke. I said Fallujah. That's Iraq. He was in Kandahar, I believe, in Afghanistan, working as an interpreter for us.
I try not to give out more information.
Yeah, I know. I understand. Tell me. This is inside baseball, but our viewers might appreciate it. How much does it help when a sitting member of Congress starts to put the pressure on? Hey, we have got to get Family A out of there. Here's the vital information. Is that something that can push it over the finish line?
Well, certainly given the vital information. Like, I don't want to give a bad name to our State Department, Department of Defense. They look out for everybody. Given a mission, they're going to execute that mission. They're not trying to, classify someone that's better than anybody else when it comes to this kind of these kinds of issues, because, at the end of the day, they're just trying to get people through. But when we're able to kind of break through the lines of communication, get them the information they need, be able to show that they have the proper paperwork, that helps a lot. And so that's the one area that I think we were actually able to specialize, that I think, was extremely important, is that we were able to communicate who these people were. We were able to communicate their status. So there was, in terms of them legally being able to come to the United States, and we're able to, coordinate where they are in real time with the Department of Defense, with the State Department, so they actually knew how to get to them. And that actually makes a very big difference, especially when a chaotic situation like we saw there.
They were in a race against the clock, and at the end, I believe she had to wear an identifying red scarf, something of that nature, so that when
Correct.
she got to the gates of the Kabul airport, they knew, okay, they're looking for her. They know that kind of gets the process sped up. In your view, how much was the Taliban actually helping us expedite this? Could they be trusted, in other words?
At that time, no. They were causing some of the biggest problems because in terms of allowing access to the airport, it made it more difficult for us to get there. They weren't very, understanding of the crowds, and then from understand they had beaten some of the members up, some of the refugees who were trying to get out. So what we needed to do was for them to be able to get as close as possible to the airport, to the Marine security or the Afghan commandos, and allow them to be recognized as being properly vetted in order for them to be there. So the one time that we sent her there, we did had her wear a very bright red scarf, so that way the guards would recognize her and try to pull their family in. I actually believe that was not what occurred that one time. We saw them, they saw them, but it was too hard to get through the crowd. Secondary time, they were able to direct them to the right gate, and we got them to the right gate, and they worked their way through the crowd and came up and showed their visas directly to them. And that guard did have their name readily accessible. So that's why they were able to move them at that point and move them into the airport.
Congressman, for you, this is personal because you put it on the line as a U.S. Marine in Iraq, right? Mm-hmm. So this whole war on terror and dealing with the Taliban, how did it feel to have to kind of work with them and trust them? And
I never trusted them.
Well, I think that's wise. But do you know what I'm saying? I mean, you spent a considerable amount of time and you lost men in this fight. And here we are.
In Iraq, not Afghanistan, though.
Right. But still, basically the same enemy in some regards. And here you are in this odd position of having to trust them and work with them.
Well, to be clear, we did not actually trust and or work with them. We were working with Afghan commandos and American military personnel that were on the base, on the airfield, I should say.
Didn't they have to get through a Taliban perimeter, though, first?
We had to get through a Taliban perimeter, but that was actually largely due to really the work of this father and mother learning, how to maneuver through those checkpoints and going around the checkpoints. I really can't take credit for that. That is credit on their part for really having the know-how of how to do that. Our job was to get them, once they get past those Taliban checkpoints, for us to find them, grab them, and bring them in. In other areas where I have helped Afghan evacuees, we've had to not necessarily deal directly with the Taliban, but at some point try to work with one way or the other through them, around them, or negotiate with them. That's a different story. But in this case, we did not work with the Taliban.
So this sounds like you're doing more than just this family. This continues.
Yes, I've been actively helping families and individuals try to leave Afghanistan. I'm hoping to wrap up one more and be done. But
okay, let's show the pictures again of the reunification here in Phoenix with you and the family. And I'm going to ask you, how many Americans do you believe we still have there? I mean, Anthony Blinken is saying it's maybe less than 100 now. Is that square with what you know? And maybe thousands of green card holders from Afghanistan who have the right to come here, who can come here, who helped us in the war. Is that square with what your knowledge is?
So from my knowledge, yes, we're probably actually less than hundreds. And remember, there's some people that just don't want to come back, right? And there's going to be, American citizens that are going to want to stay in Afghanistan. They have a right to do that. We can't force them to come back. They want to take care of their families. They want to be there. That's their right. And then we have thousands of legal permanent residents that I think would want to come back and or have the right to come back. So.
In the final, we've got about 3 minutes left. I want to hit a couple of things. I just want your grade on how this whole thing unwound in Afghanistan. This must have, as a Marine, pained you to watch this.
Well, look, I think the evacuation and leaving Afghanistan that certainly could have been done way better. I think in that regard, I think we did supremely well in evacuating more than 150,000 people in 2 weeks. At the same time, I think it was time for us to leave Afghanistan. And I will say that there was really no clean way to leave Afghanistan. Whenever we left Afghanistan, there was always going to be people trying to get out. There was always going to be people that were going to try to miss. I think there were certain things we could have done at the beginning of that evacuation that could have made at least it easier for us to transfer our people out. But, in all of our estimations and everything we have been told by the military for years, we never, ever thought that the Afghan army would fold that quickly and the government would fold that quickly, that we wouldn't have enough time to get people out. And I think that's a fault of, one, of course, the Afghan army government itself, but two, we have to look at what happened with our intelligence gathering and how did they miss this assessment to that point. And, at some point we made a bad decision based on bad intel, and we need to go back and see where that came from. But again, I am not happy that we left Afghanistan. I think it's the right call. It's in the best interest of this country and our future posture when it comes to defense. But, of course, it doesn't make me happy how, it went down for our 13 Marines and 12 Marines and Navy corpsmen, I think, and Army personnel, too. And also, of course, the fact that we still have people we left back that we wanted to get out. But
how concerned are you that we're going to end up back in there at some point because it could become a hotbed again for terrorist activity? How concerned are you about that?
I'm not. I don't think we're ever going to go back there with the footprint that we have right now, because at the end of the day, it doesn't actually bring us more security. As a matter of fact, it only gives them more targets and more opportunity to fundraise and for other jihadi activities, especially if you're Al Qaeda or ISIS-K. I do think that we're going to operate in the country in different ways to suppress whatever we see are threats to us. But I do not see ourselves really being an occupying force in Afghanistan, nor do we see ourselves being like around the world trying to be more of an occupying force. I think you're going to see us actually really move away from that and focus on the core things that are really existential threats to the country versus, I think, some things that are more considered regional threats.
Let me hit a couple more before we let you go.
Sure.
This situation in Del Rio, Texas, boy, I mean, these images are horrific. I don't think any American can look at this and say, this system is working. This looks to me like unbridled chaos. How do you read this? And what do you think should be done?
I mean, there are a couple of things to point out. Like, number one, where you see those families right now, that's on the Mexican side of the border. We can't control who comes through Mexico. Obviously, we can talk to the Mexicans and everything else like that. But when it comes to the processing on the United States side, they actually are going through a process. The people that are applying for asylum are given their opportunity. And at the same time, those that have legitimate claims are allowed to stay here and go to court. Those that aren't are being removed and deported back to Haiti. So right now, there is a process that's working right now. The problem is that the process has been overall 14,000 people. But let's be clear, when you see those images right now of all those people right there, that's on the Mexican side of the border, right? And I think that's what people have to remember. Number two, again, there's a process that's happening. I think the most important thing is that we have to do this process in a humane manner and give people the right to, ask for refugee and ask for asylum and make sure that we're actually giving those that deserve it. Now, the last thing we need, though, because this is not within the values of the United States, like we should not have Border Patrol using their reins to whip people to get them in order. That's
I'm not sure that's been substantiated yet. They're looking into it. The reins are definitely on those horses, and some of the pictures look like, people are claiming they may have been used as whips, but that has not been proven. So we got to be careful there.
Well, from what I understand on my end, yes. And, whether you're used as whips or you used it to move people, either way, when you're dealing in that, you do have to abide by, I think, the standards of the United States.
No argument there.
And you can do enforcement, by the way, and you can do enforcement. I'm not saying Border Patrol shouldn't do enforcement. I think they should. They should make sure they're there to help the process happen. And there's ways to do that without going overboard that, I think are against the standards of the United States. One final
thing before we go. I have to ask you because you're in the middle of it. Where are we on this budget battle, the $3.5 trillion, the linkage with the infrastructure package, $1.5 trillion? It seems that Democrats are kind of fraying right now over this. What do you think's going to happen here?
I think there'll be an overall deal that's cut because there was a deal that began this conversation. The deal was very simple. These things both moved on the same track. Both sides agreed to this. Both the Senate and the House, and we're going to finish that deal. Now, will it be 3.5 trillion? I don't know. Will it be everything that came out of the Senate? I don't know, but that's part of the compromise. But we will land this plane at the end of the day. I think the marker that we have to worry about, no matter what, is let's not get bogged down in the process, because that's what Americans don't care about, the process, right? And even politicians don't care about the process. Let's care about the outcome. Are we going to employ more Americans? Are more people going to be able to send their kids to reliable childcare? Are we going to have childcare tax credit? Are we going to have the funding that we need to really energize our economy and also decarbonize our economy? These are the things that we should worry about, but they can only happen if we work together. And there was an original deal between the House and the Senate that they will move together, and we have to stick by the deal, because if you don't stick with deals while you're in politics, and that's when real chaos breaks out.
Well, if everybody kept their word in politics, we'd be in a whole different situation.
100% agree.
All right, Congressman Ruben Gallego, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you for your efforts on behalf of these families. That's
my pleasure.
That's some great work. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate it.
Have a good one.
Good to see you. When we come back on Newsmaker Saturday and we talk to the congressman about this, the situation in Del Rio, Texas, emblematic of what? What are we looking at here? Where are we going with this immigration issue? Where are these folks going? What's happening along the border and the communities impacted by these scenes? We're back in a minute on Newsmaker Saturday with somebody who knows very well what's happening. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, the situation on the border, you've been watching the pictures out of Del Rio, Texas, mainly Haitian immigrants coming up largely from Chile, a lot of them. And now they're being processed. Some are going to the interior of the U.S., some are being taken back to Haiti, but that's actually a smaller number. So we're going to talk about all of this with a guy who knows the border very well. He has roots here in Arizona, used to work for the Arizona Republic, Uriel Garcia. He's a Texas Tribune investigative reporter and immigration reporter. You spent time in El Paso, you spent time here in Phoenix, and you grew up in Mexico, correct, Uriel?
I was born in Mexico. Actually, I grew up in Phoenix.
Uriel, you've been down there. Tell me your impressions as we look at some of the pictures from earlier this week. What did you see? What is your sense of what's going on?
Right. I spent there quite a few days, and what I saw, regardless of where anyone stands politically, it's pretty chaotic. Migrants who have been processed and were in Del Rio trying to get buses and flights out of there to meet with their families seemed pretty disoriented, didn't have money. Some of them didn't have cell phones to connect with families. And so they were confused as to where they're supposed to go to, how to get there. And the camp itself, and talking to some of the migrants, they said that they hadn't eaten and drank water in days. A lot of them were crossing the river back to Mexico to buy some hygiene products, food and water, and make some makeshift shelters, really.
Uriel, did you get a short, concise answer that would illustrate why they are coming here at this time?
Right. It's my understanding that in talks with some of the migrants that they're coming now because jobs in Chile and neighboring countries are scarce now.
Did they talk about the Biden policies? Because there is a sense, at least from a lot of the reporting, that during Trump they did not feel welcome here, and that he would play pretty hardball on the border with folks who wanted to come here. Do you get any sense that there are political policies that are driving this?
Well, in talking to them, I think that they weren't necessarily up to date with the specific policies. What they had heard was that, based on talking among other people who wanted to immigrate, is that there could be a possibility to come in. It's unclear if really that was based on who the president is now, because keep in mind that Title 42, which is the policy that under the Trump administration that expels migrants at the border, is still in place.
Right. Is it your sense that these folks are being taken back to Haiti? What percentage are being taken back to Haiti, their home country? And what percentage are being flown just to get them out of the encampment and moving them to the interior of the U.S.?
Specific numbers haven't been up to date as of now, and being in Del Rio, what I could tell is that the people who were being processed into the country were families with pregnant women, and families with children were being taken to other processing centers across the Southwest.
Now, explain that to me, Uriel. How does that work? I mean, how would they choose where to send a particular family? Do they have family here that they're trying to unify them with, or are they just saying, we're just going to spread it out? We're going to spread it out over several different cities, Tucson being one of them, by the way.
Right. So when a migrant is being sent to a processing center, and that usually means that they're going to go there, they're going to be identified by immigration agents, and they're going to, the migrant themselves are going to make a claim, usually for asylum, and give a brief interview as to why they feel that they should be, why they're fleeing their home country.
Okay, now in this case, if they're leaving Chile, and some of them have been there as long as 4 years, they're not under any direct threat. This wouldn't be a typical asylum claim coming from a country that is persecuting them, in other words. So the asylum claim for these folks who'd been there in Chile for years, that's not going to fly. So what do they do? What do they lean on if they want to stay here?
Right. I guess one thing to keep in mind is that when someone leaves their home country and go into another home country, a person can only make an asylum claim at the U.S. So in order to make an asylum case, they have to be here, and they have up to a year to make that claim. And the government will decide that if their home country is safe enough to return, they can return. And if not, they may be able to stay here temporarily. One thing to keep in mind is that Haiti was recently struck by an earthquake, and their president was recently assassinated. So the federal government, I'm sure, are going to take those two things into account. But of course, just because they're processed into the country does not mean that they're going to stay here permanently.
We're going to show one final picture of this area cleared out now. As of Friday, they had cleared it out. It doesn't even look like the same place. These aerials, there is no one there. They've cleared it out. And the understanding is there's other people coming this way, and this may be a processing center again. Is that your understanding?
Yeah, now that the federal government has seen how many people could come in and what they need, they may be a little bit prepared to make this into a better processing center to take more people.
Uriel Garcia, Texas Tribune immigration reporter, worked at the Arizona Republic, and we really appreciate your time, Uriel. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me on.
You got it. Good to see you. We're back in a moment talking about the election audit in our final thoughts on Newsmaker Saturday. Back on Newsmaker Saturday, obviously the other huge story this week, the audit has been completed, as you probably know, on Maricopa County's 2020 election. And to the surprise of many, Cyber Ninjas, the company performing that audit that was derided as being in the tank for Donald Trump, found that Joe Biden not only won Maricopa County, but actually picked up 300 votes. Few people expected that outcome. But the audit also found some problems with how our elections are being handled. The question now is, will any useful information come out of this going forward, considering that the entire audit has become so politicized? It is possible that two things can be true, that Joe Biden won Maricopa County and that elections going forward can be improved. Let's take a look at the website. If you want to find this program or a past program on Newsmaker Saturday, you go to this spot, fox10phoenix.com/newsmaker. You can find prior shows there. We will see you next week on Newsmaker Saturday.